Hello and welcome to Statement Games Live. Statement Games Live is presented to you by StatementGames Incorporated, the most innovative, alternative, free-to-play fantasy sports platform operating in the gaming industry. For our gaming innovation, our platform has been highlighted on ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. I'm Nathan Cheatham. I'm here with Marc Saulino. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? A lot of stuff, a lot of freaking stuff. I feel like this was a pretty freaking busy week here, and there's so many different topics that we can kind of touch upon. But then again, we got things to do, people to see, places to go. Where do you
Yep.
start? So we'll do our best. I think we got a couple of different interesting things that we'll cover this week. So let's have a little
Yeah.
fun and kind of touch upon the business aspect of sports gaming, fantasy sports, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about this show?
Yeah, sure. On the show, me and you, meaning Marc Saulino and Nathan Cheatham, cover sports gaming news and its relationships to the overall statement game strategy. We feel that this show is kind of ideal for sports marketers, content creators, bloggers, vloggers, influencers, basically anyone who's going to actually enjoy the, I guess, two very entrepreneurial minded spirits and, progressing and watching how we trek and try and carve out a little bit of our own unique space in this widely emerging, crazy fantasy gaming space.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's jump into some gaming news. What do you got for us this week?
I mean, like I said, there was a lot here, and I actually struggled with where do you want to start here. So I got a couple of different visuals if you want to pull it up here. I mean, we could have gone with, the whole Penn Gaming stuff and the women's hockey kind of league and that kind of a little feud kind of going on right now. Of course, you have GameStop, a pretty significant retailer and distributor of not necessarily fantasy games, but games kind of in general,
Mhm.
and what kind of took place there from a Reddit perspective and how that's affected the stock market. Different things like that. Again, the CEO of Barstool, Dave Portnoy, got involved with that here. Just fascinating stuff, high quality content, entertaining stuff here. Like I said, I want to focus in on a couple different things here. First and foremost here, just as a follow up to last week, the markets of Michigan and Virginia did join the sports gaming kind of ranks. So
Nice.
they're currently live and they're streaming kind of along. Things are kind of doing pretty well. As it turns out, as a result of those two markets going live here, the sports betting is pretty much at an all-time high with these two particular markets kind of joining. And it looks like from a legislative perspective, hey, you know what? Who knew? Puerto Rico is interested in sports betting and sports kind of gaming. They recently just passed legislation. Early estimates are that maybe kind of around April 1st or the beginning kind of April is when people would officially start to be able to make, I guess, wages on sports in that
Mhm.
territory, if you want to. I mean, you can't say state, but with everything
Yeah.
that's going on now, I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be a day in the not too distant future here where we change that kind of title from territory to a state. Same thing with Washington D.C. But for now,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, hopefully by first second week of April, if you're traveling to Puerto Rico and things are looking kind of better, planning a little pre-summer vacation or summer vacation or a post-summer vacation, if you go into Puerto Rico, you might have an opportunity to bet on some sports. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's pretty huge. We got three major markets, opening up, and just at the beginning of the year, so it can only improve from here. I'm sure there's a domino effect that's coming.
Yep, we will see here. No, I definitely wanted to spend some time on this next topic, and I think it's pretty much the most significant piece of fantasy sports gaming news that we've seen in a while. I actually would probably say probably since we've actually seen the Barstool and the whole Penn Gaming kind of a merger acquisition kind of take place here. In this particular case, you actually have a major casino, sports kind of a gaming provider with all of the, I guess, casino properties that they're located in, the sports books that are intertwined with those properties. And kind of now you actually have the officially, let's see here, I think in my notes here, this is the third the third
Mhm.
major casino that has acquired a fantasy sports company and has intertwined them into their portfolio. I'll put some press releases in the show notes just so that people are aware of it. I think it's a pretty fascinating story. It looks like the deal is for about 90 million, all stock, kind of like transaction. With Bally's acquiring kind of like a Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight does position them as or actually I should say this, they position themselves as the fastest growing DFS provider within the industry. Hey, look, I drink my own particular Kool-Aid from a Statement Games perspective.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to give them or award them that title, but I understand the game here. It's marketing. But hey, you know what? I'm not necessarily sitting here kind of like, touting how Statement Games was recently acquired for $90 million. So kudos to them. Great job. I've actually
Mhm.
had an opportunity to meet a couple of those guys throughout the course of my Statement Games journey. Great guys. Pretty good product. I'm actually, for research purposes. And hey, I've played a couple of their games kind of like as well. Good people. So congratulations with them. If you kind of like, peel away a couple of the different layers of the onion, although 90 million sounds attractive here, it is important to understand that it's mostly a stock transaction. Of that 90, 50 million of that stock that's going over to the Monkey Knife Fight kind of guys is vested kind of immediately.
Mhm.
And then the other 40 million can actually be accrued through certain performances and milestones that they're looking to achieve between now and the next couple of years. And
Gotcha.
what I really thought was kind of fascinating about this deal, and again, these are kind of like press releases and things like that, and the additional notes are in the comment section or in the show notes, kind of like below here. If you take a look at their subscriber base, about 180,000 subscribers, right? And about 80,000 subscribers as well, which is a great kind of like, number, right? But when you take a look at the history of Monkey Knife Fight, great founders, great track record, great background, pretty significant backing. If you kind of like,
Mhm.
do some research and you'll kind of like, take a look at who kind of like initially backed them and how he kind of made his fortune. So not necessarily looking to throw grenades at anybody over here, and I don't really care one way or another here. But the money does initially come from the porn industry, which hey, God bless
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
They found kind of like a backer that made a lot of freaking money within porn, and they linked up with them, they backed them, and they're at the position that they're at today. So, in my opinion,
Yeah.
there's kind of like nothing wrong with that. But from a statement perspective, I look at it like this. Yes, 180,000 users is a big number. But it's not necessarily like we're kind of like counting a company with a database with a few million users in their database. And if you kind of like break things down, I'm kind of like looking at it from this perspective. 180,000 users, about 80,000 of those, that 180 are actually paying subscribers. And the way I'm interpreting that is these are individuals who's actually made deposits into Monkey Knife Fight. Simple math here. And I'm basing this off of feedback that I'm getting when I'm speaking to investors from a Statement Games perspective. One of the key things, it's not the only thing, but one of the key things that they look at as companies is obviously users,
Mhm.
traction, things like that. And they base valuations on that. Now, valuations are extremely subjective. Basically, they're subjective in terms of it's really kind of like up to the person making the investment or the buyer to place the final value what you're doing here. But if I'm looking at their numbers here, if I take 90 million divided by 180,000, that's about $500 per user. If I kind of like do it from a paid subscriber perspective, that's about $1,125 per subscriber that they're kind of like basing it on here. Now, if we're just utilizing that in itself here, without necessarily tipping my hand here, I can make a strong argument that Statement Games has a valuation of about 7.5 million right now.
It's not bad.
So I just kind of like wanted to talk a little bit about what the potential end game is, and obviously we kind of like seeing what the end game is from Monkey Knife Fight. You take a look at some of the things that we're actually doing here, and yeah, I mean, I think we have a fairly strong plan, and we're on the right path here. We still have a lot of work to do here, but it's good to see a company, not necessarily with a name like FanDuel or DraftKings or anybody of like the higher echelon, top-notch guys, carve out a little news, in the
Mhm.
fantasy gaming space here. So I wanted to, just open up with that, throw it over to you to see if you had any immediate, thoughts and comments, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very aware of Monkey Knife Fight. Not that I've played
They
them,
reached out to you at
but
one point, right? Weren't they looking to
no, that was a
potentially do
different
something?
company.
Oh, it was a different
Um,
company. All right.
yeah, but Monkey Knife Fight, they are involved with one of our. uh, It's tough to say competitors, but like one of the big bands in fantasy football media, Dynasty League football. They actually offer a rate where if you join Monkey Knife Fight, deposit $10, you get a free subscription to their
Gotcha.
platform. And the whole marketing, I looked at. This has been recommended to me in the past because my website has a subscription model, and people were saying like this has really worked well for DLF, and it's a great partnership. They actually make more off of the referral than they do the subscription. I think Monkey Knife Fight gives them like $25 a deposit. Uh,
Gotcha.
so this has been something I've been aware of, uh, and I know it's a very popular platform within the fantasy sports, like Twitter arena, which I'm in, and it's cool to see them growing and looking at these numbers. Like, to be honest, like even my numbers aren't that far off. Maybe not so much the paid subscribers, but the
Yep.
users, in a given month. Um, we hit, 75% of that.
I understand. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, like I said here, this is when you take a look at Bally's. This is literally. I mean, there's a lot of sports betting companies out there, or a lot of sports betting companies that are starting to become like more prominent and become a little bit more of a household name, more so today than say again 2 or 3 years ago here. So it's just kind of
Oh,
like an
yeah.
interesting piece of news here. I thought what's also kind of like interesting besides from Monkey Knife Fight, if you kind of like take a look at the long term strategy of Bally's, you have a strategy in where, okay, you know what, they've now added a daily fantasy sports provider, if you want to call them that, into their arsenal, so to speak here.
Mhm.
Of course, you have sports gaming kind of like taking place here, and sports betting being allowed to open up in various different casinos outside of the Las Vegas area. So that's something that they're hanging their hat on here. And recently, they actually just kind of like signed a partnership with Sinclair Broadcast, with the Sinclair Broadcast Group. And
Mhm.
obviously, Sinclair Broadcasting Group has a pending acquisition of its own for BetWorks, which is basically a technology company, developer of software or sports betting kind of software. So overall, kind of like a big picture, sports betting, DFS, Sinclair. I'm not that familiar with them, but I'm
Mhm.
obviously familiar with Ring of Honor and the Tennis Channel, which are, I guess, two kind of like media channels that are underneath the Sinclair kind of like umbrella. So I'm familiar with that. I mean, of course, they have like that as well, but you're kind of like starting to see what the overall strategy of these organizations are: sports betting, combining it with DFS, incorporating media. I don't think it's going to be that far of a stretch to actually see an organization like Bally's starting to create content or media, all in an effort to, you know, broadcast, educate, get people a little bit more intertwined within their funnels from a DFS perspective, and then ultimately, try and convert these people into
Mhm.
sports gaming accounts, whether it's online or through their brick and mortar kind of casinos. And what's also kind of important is, okay, aligning themselves up with a technology company that has built proprietary kind of software. So I don't know, Nathan, if you kind of like took a step back here and you have to take a wild guess at another company. Although, hey, you know what? I'm not necessarily counting myself as a Bally's as of right now here, but does that strategy kind of sound familiar to another? organization that you may or may not be aligned with very strategically and closely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's a growing trend, absolutely, for these companies seeing, especially with the way content is taking off and growing as just a industry. Um, it's very much like your articles, your media is what brings in the attention, and then you want to have something that transitions that attention into a monetary value, because advertising is going away. Not fully, obviously, but if you look at what ad revenues and ad budgets were, 20, 30 years ago, they're peanuts now.
Mhm.
It's so spread out as far as like how people consume their media, their information, and everything, that it's difficult to really go and spend a wide budget and target in such a way that the former generation had done it with newspapers, with TV, old media. Now with new media, it's all over the place. So rather than spending that ad budget, you kind of create a top down uh, conglomerate almost, where you have people coming in, viewing your media, and then you transition them with some sort of product, and then keep them there, and there's your app. That's why you get your proprietary developer.
Mhm.
And then you're just kind of this funnel, and the cyclical motion of just keeping people within your space.
Yep, absolutely. Let me just take a quick look here for something here. Just gonna pull out a piece of paper. I'll show it in a second, just to kind of like drive home my point here. But if you look at, I mean, with the way the technology is kind of developed, today, whether it be StreamYard, which we're kind of like utilizing right now, and YouTube here, it's not like kind of the barrier to entry into like the media market with some of these kind of like tools. Even I mean, your freaking cell phone can actually be it is in many particular cases a small like little media devices for recording and kind of like streaming to the world via the internet. The landscape is completely kind of changed. It's been turned upside down its head here, and there's obviously a lot of these core components that go into long-term strategies of these DFS providers, sports gaming kind of companies, and it's really kind of a top-down approach here. Technology, media, unique value propositions, a platform in itself here, and then ultimately some type of online or in-person brick and mortar location from a sports betting perspective. So just something that's extremely fascinating. I think it's one of the main reasons as to why we're doing what we're doing, and why we feel that with the right partnerships, the right amount of kind of effort here, we can carve out our own space. It's possible. We're seeing people like Monkey Knife Fight go ahead and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it's already kind of going to come up on my end here. The number one question that I've actually gotten this week from, I guess, my community, or specifically my investor community: what's the difference between Monkey Knife Fight and Statement Games? Like, what are you guys doing that they're not doing here? And if you take a look at, I guess, the core of what they're doing, it's a completely different product. Of course, I'm biased and I feel that my product is better, but I don't think you would expect me to say anything less here. But it's a product in where, look, they're kind of like presenting you with a proposition. Of course, Statement Games is involved in the gaming and prop betting genre, so to speak here. But you're picking a couple of different kind of picks, one or two. You're either going head to head, or you're actually being rewarded for getting a percentage of those picks correct here, whether you're going 2 for 2 or 3 for 4, so on and so forth here. So it's kind of like quick, down and dirty. You're making a prop one way or another. Screenshot here just gives a very basic high level example of how I kind of logged into my account here and checked out one of the games that they're featuring, which today is Friday. It looks like tonight you have the Milwaukee Bucks playing the New Orleans Pelicans on national TV. From a Statement Games perspective, our game is a little bit different in the sense that we're presenting you with a list of props, game props and player props. There's probably anywhere between 50 and 60 of them. So once you join our contest here, you're going through a little bit of a process that's more of a thinking process. It's more of a handicapping process, and where you're making 10 picks, you're ranking them in order of confidence from 10 through 1. And as the game plays out, you're going to get points for picks that become correct. And obviously, you're not going to be getting any points for picks that become incorrect. So, for example, if number 10 pick becomes correct and Giannis scores over 30.5 points tonight here, you're going to get 10 points. If your 9 through 1 selections are incorrect, well, now you just have a total of 10 points. You're always going to play in a league of anywhere between 8 to 12 people. The person with the most points from correct picks at the end of that specific tournament is going to win. And I want to pull this up over here just to kind of show everybody here that whole process of what we're actually doing is patented in the form of a patent issued by the United States Trademark and Patent Office. So hopefully that, gives the people who are checking this out from a business perspective just a high level overview of how our product differs from a platform like Monkey Knife Fight here. And not only is it different from a gaming perspective, how it actually is protected from an intellectual property perspective. It's protected from an intellectual property perspective in the form of a patent.
Yeah, so Monkey Knife Fight can't just one day change up and decide to do something similar to yours, because that would become infringement. And you guys are very, very different in the sense that, like, when you go through the process with Monkey Knife Fight and you're picking, you're not playing against anyone, playing against the stats. Whereas when you're picking in statement games, you're playing against someone else. So you could play in 3 different contests with with the same lineup and have 3 different outcomes depending on how your other contest teammates, I guess, play.
Yeah, and just to kind of be fair, I do believe that there are aspects of the Monkey Knife Fight platform and where you can play against other people. It's usually one other person, as opposed to kind of I guess going head to head with a computer or a machine or something like that, which is definitely a little bit more in line with traditional sports betting. But then again, kind of in my opinion, again, this is just kind of my opinion. I don't really find that being that unique or that different from what anyone else could potentially do. I mean, it's something that I kind of go through and answer all the time. Hey, you know what? Why can't DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever it is do what you're doing? And yes, I do have intellectual property, right? And in theory, that kind of protects the organization and the tools that we have. But I'm sure these guys could potentially, create some type of modifications to the game and things like that, and kind of tout it themselves. However, what's easier at this stage of the game here? I mean, if you think what we've done, or even what Monkey Knife Fight has done, or anybody's actually done, is easy, well, then how come nobody else has really kind of done it?
Right.
I mean, you're talking about things that kind of cost, manpower, resources, capital, brain power. Just it's not kind of easy to do, and we're trucking along here. So the argument is, all right, you know what? Yeah, you can kind of do it, but same thing. Like you and I, we can go out and buy all of the lumber and hammers and nails in the world that we want and build a house. I'd rather freaking have a contractor build it for me.
Do it right.
I mean, isn't that kind of a line with Tommy Boy, right? I'd rather the T-bone steak here. I can get a good look at a T-bone steak by sticking my head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. Come on,
that sounds familiar.
Tommy Boy?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think I screwed up the punchline here, but I forget the name of the actor, but Tommy Boy's father. Hey, why can't I do this here? Well, I can get a good look at a T-bone steak by sticking my head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's. I think I'm screwing up that punchline, but anyway, that's.
We'll take your word for it.
Well, that's it. Fuck, I thought that was actually going to be pretty funny, but I guess I got to work on my delivery. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at here. So, kind of getting back, and I guess you can kind of take the slides off, and we'll bring it back up when we kind of do it here. But in this particular section here, we always like to try and tie in. Well, what does this mean? What does this mean for statement games? And I think I want to put like a little bit of a spin on it, and where, hey, not only what does this mean for statement games, but what does this mean to you? I mean, if you're listening to this show, odds are you're either in the business of sports, a potential angel investor, or somebody who's kind of like on the hunt for different ideas and things like that. Maybe you're, have aspirations of blogging about sports or vlogging about sports, or maybe you got your own kind of sports blog as well, and you're always kind of like looking for different angles and tips on, how to make the engine run a little bit more cleaner. This is kind of like, how I'm kind of like, breaking it down here. And as we've kind of like, seen with Bally's and Monkey Knife Fight here, there is a continued precedent that is being set on what the potential end game could be for all of us. What the end game could be, kind of like for statement games, what it can actually mean for you, so on and so forth here. And the point that we actually want to make is, look, I'm not sure how everything will play out. Time is going to tell, but I have a pretty clear path, and I have a pretty definitive plan on how to actually grow my platform to anywhere between 100 to 250,000 subscribers. We'll see kind of like what happens. We're on that path, and we'll continue to kind of go on that path. And I've always kind of like touted to the people within my community here, and where, hey, you know what? Let's check off that milestone. Take a look at our cards, see what type of deck we're holding, and make a decision on how we progress forward with the company from there. I'm looking at potentially doubling my subscriber base at this particular rate by Q3 of 2024. I know that there's a lot of different things that need to happen, but that's kind of like what I'm actually looking at. And one of the main reasons as to why you and I are doing kind of like what we're doing here, because we recognize that there's a significant importance in terms of building a community. Not just in terms of subscribers or end users, but take a look at the Slack channel that we've actually developed, right? We have other particular little networks like flteams.com, LA Peach Basket, which is a basketball kind of network covering the California basketball teams out west here. IDP guys, Tarps Off Sports, kind of like up in kind of like Canada. By all of us like coming together, I mean, we don't necessarily have an extensive amount of capital, but we have time, we have guts, and we have a drive to kind of like band together as a community and progress with it forward. I mean, for all the results that I'm kind of like taking, or through all these little partnerships or joint ventures that we're creating internally, I can already account to how our, I guess, domain authority within search engines has increased by about 23% in the last 2 months. The StatementGames platform, we reviewed this kind of like yesterday, is currently generating about 40,000 impressions per week, and I'm sure it could actually be more, or is more here, when you account for everything that everybody else is kind of like doing here. So we kind of like have a lot of things kind of like on our plate. We're building out a lot of the proper assets, and hey, this is the way I'm kind of like looking at it here. We all have dreams or envisions of getting a piece of the fantasy sports or fantasy gaming kind of like pie, which is obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, hey, when you take a look at some of the things that we're actually doing here, I mean, I'll just run through kind of like a series of questions here. We're doing a lot of the right things. Statement Games product perspective. What do you think? Do we have a unique value proposition or not?
Oh, absolutely.
We have a team. We're touching upon media verticals, same type of verticals, not necessarily with the extensive power as a Bally's is kind of like doing. We have users. We have loyal users. We actually now have paying customers in the form of the Statement Games VIP program. Obviously, you're selling kind of like subscriptions. We could point to a user base that grows on a monthly basis. And I don't know. What do you think here? I mean, you see kind of what our pipeline looks like. We have leads and prospects at the team level, at the league level, and where white labeling or licensing opportunities of our platform are viable, all in an effort to address challenges that are facing these guys today in areas of fan engagement. And look, there's a lot of things that we kind of got going on here. So I'll just shut up for a second and kick it back over to you for some basic thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, obviously Statement Games, just in the 2 years that I've been aware of you guys and partnering with you guys. You guys have been growing so much, and the same thing can be said about my company and what we're doing. And it's a matter of like always pushing and always trying to get to that next goal. And I think that definitely from what I've seen just in the past couple months, you guys are right on that precipice of taking the next step of kind of. And it's amazing to consider that by the third quarter you could triple what you're seeing for your user base, which I don't doubt. I mean, more and more
Yeah.
I'm seeing interactions on Twitter, interactions from people playing the game, playing the sport.
Well, look, I mean, again, we're trying to get to a point and drive this point home here, and where we're all trying to, carve out our piece of the pie here. Well, we think we got a pretty good plan, and we got a lot of the right steps in place here, and where we can, achieve that milestone here. And we're always looking for partners. We're always looking for individuals, whether you're an investor, a blogger, a vlogger, or anything like that, that might kind of like be looking to be part of a bigger picture. Because I know for a fact, I don't want to speak for you, but I will. We can't do this on our own. Like we can't. We need we need help. I mean, look, I got both arms up in the air right now. I mean, we're kind of like looking for, and we'll take kind of all the help that we can actually get. And I want to kind of like make this point as well. I'm not sure how you kind of like feel about it, and I feel this way because there's a little jealousy that takes place kind of like within me, right? Because you see, and I'm sure you do like the same thing here. We do a lot of research, right? We watch like a lot of different streams. We watch a lot of other kind of podcasts, sports cup podcasts, and things like that. And there are so many different kind of podcasts that are out there that basically build a show around FanDuel or DraftKings. That's kind of like what they do, but they're kind of like smaller players. And I think that's kind of like great. But I would like to kind of like encourage these guys, and where, hey, look, you're doing what you're doing because you're trying to get the attention of some of these bigger players with the hopes that they either partner with you or buy you out or bring you on to some type of like talent. Well, who the hell am I to kind of like say that dream or that realization can't take place or can't kind of happen? But I look at it from perspective of you're a dime a dozen. There, I kind of like said it. I'm not sure kind of like how you feel about it. You're a dime a dozen. There are so many other people that are out there doing kind of like what you're doing. Unless you actually have something that's different or unique from a show perspective, a talent perspective, or from a technology perspective, it's very hard to trek down that path. So I would like to make the argument that continue doing what you're doing, but then also take a look at some of the smaller providers like StatementGames and kind of like do both, because basically I can offer you a piece of the larger pie. I have the plan. I also have the structure from a business perspective, being that we're incorporated in the state of Delaware. Everything that we do has been registered with the SEC. All that corporate bologna that is. It's tough, but it's a pain in the ass. Well, it's not that tough. It's just a freaking pain in the ass to do. And if you don't necessarily have the right acumen to kind of like do it, it can trip you up here. I don't necessarily count that as my strongest skill sets, but again, getting back to the help part here, I have people who help us and can like do that. So I feel that we can kind of like help people go ahead and do that here, and then. Look, I come across a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people, and they say, hey, you know what, great idea, great platform here. Go ahead and talk to me when you have 100,000 people on your platform, or talk to me when you have 150,000 people on your platform. There's something we can do that in. Well, in the case of Monkey Knife Fight, if you get to 150, 180,000, it could be freaking too late for you. So that's I guess what I kind of like wanted to work in and tie in terms of, hey, what does all this stuff mean to StatementGames, but what it can also mean to you as a partner or as a contributor to the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a common thing where you're trying as a entrepreneur with a product, with a platform, going out trying to get people to buy in, and it's always like a bar that you have to get over. And I think that it is, and this is something that when you originally came to me a couple years ago, I didn't set that bar. I didn't say like, oh well, you're not at this level. So I'll work with you at that point. I bought in right away. I saw the potential, and
Yeah.
the potentials, you start low and you build up to where where it's going to go. So you're not going to buy, it's like stock. Like, you don't buy stock at the peak.
Yeah.
You're paying too much at that point. So
Any type
um
of investment that you're doing, whether it's from a capital perspective or, hey, look, you know what, we're always looking for investments in statement games, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're looking for cash. I'll take a sweat equity or an investment of your time, all in an effort to, help everybody kind of achieve a greater kind of good here. And when you're kind of making an investment, in my particular opinion, you're placing a bet on what that potential could potentially be at some point in the future, not necessarily what it's at kind of right now.
mhm,
So I'm always looking for, and this is how I've built our business here. What does the market look like? It's a pretty freaking significant market that we're actually playing, right? Do you have a unique value proposition within that market? Or do you have something that's different that can attract people within that market? I feel that we've hit that kind of check box here. Do you have a product? Do you have a proof of concept? Is there something kind of in the market right now that's I can look at? Can I put my hands on it? Can I touch it? Can I feel it? Well, yeah, we've built that proof of concept, and we're at a point right now where it's much more than a proof of concept. We have a fully
mhm,
functional website. We have apps that complement the website here. We have social media channels and other things in the media kind of aspect that are all kind of pushing attention to that living and breathing kind of element. So it's not just, hey, do you have a product and whatever. And I get it. There's risks that people will associate it with it if you don't necessarily have the you know user base or the people kind of looking at it here. But then again, for people who have an appetite for risk and like kind of what we're doing here, we feel that we're playing in an extremely attractive space.
yeah, no, 100% agree. um
All right,
go
so I think I've rambled enough on that topic for now. What do you think? You want to anything you want to add, or should we start getting into some specific statement games news?
Let's get into the news. I think that's important.
Okay, just kind of a short and sweet here. Wanted to send a warm welcome to John Kingston, who is the newest member of the Statement Games team. He joins the team as a marketing intern, so look out for some good things from a writing perspective and a content perspective, from John. I'll put everything again kind of in the show notes here, but you do want to follow the Statement Games social media accounts at Statement Games on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Here, it's literally at Statement Games, all one word, no hyphens, no spaces or anything like that. Because what we're going to actually be doing is, I got some NFL gift card NFL shop gift cards that I'm going to be giving out between now leading up to the Super Bowl, and obviously the only way that you're going to have an opportunity to win those things here is by checking us out and following us on social media. I also want to extend a congratulations to Mr. Nice Guy 111. He is a VIP member of Statement Games and was the overall winner of last week's Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Green Bay Packers kind of contest as a result of him being a VIP member, which only costs $24.99 per year. Again, I will drop the details on how you can potentially become a Statement Games VIP member in the comment section below or in the show notes here. But as a result of that, in addition to winning what he actually won, there's an additional 3,000 coins that have been added to his account. We're back on basketball this week, so we'll kind of be putting out a Making Picks show in a little bit, some point later on today here. We're going to be featuring the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics on Saturday night. So that's an ABC nationally televised game. We'll put the details of that description of why you might want to check that game out in the show notes as well. And yeah, just as a recap of kind of what we're doing here, and taking a look at some of the numbers. Football and the championship games had a lot to kind of do with it, but I can additionally kind of tout that between our apps, our website, our blog, and all the other stuff that makes up the Statement Games platform, about 40,000 impressions that we're now generating week over week, and it's been pretty consistent over the past 3 weeks. So that's your bit of specific Statement Games news that we had kind of going on this week. We're still in the running for Stadia Ventures. I don't have an official update on that yet, but when I do, I will be sure to mention it in an upcoming show, one way or another, good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's round off the show with the nuggets of truth. Mark, you're known for your railing on the internet, your ranting, and what's your new rant?
All right, so let's go back to the slides. If you can pull up kind of
All
like
right.
another visuals. I wanted to work this into a little bit of a nugget of truth here. So look, I don't make any kind of qualms about it here. It's not like Statement Games has an extensive marketing budget, but we do have some dedicated people who have, time and are dedicated to kind of making this work here. And we hustle. We do pretty much like everything that we can to get people into our funnel, get people kind of aware of the Statement Games kind of brand. And one way that I actually do it is I'm actively looking for help in the form of interns or people who are just looking to kind of get their break into sports, right? So this is a message that I recently posted in a LinkedIn group. This group is a little bit more dedicated to the St. Louis Cardinals, but they're business professionals or something like that. And I'll just go ahead and read it. And then I want to kick it back over to you because I want to get your thoughts on this message here. I want you to kind of tell me, hey, you know what, is this too invasive? Am I stepping on anybody's toes here? And then we'll kind of go from there. But basically, I write, how's everyone doing? I wanted to introduce myself as the CEO and founder of StatementGames.com. We're a free-to-play sports gaming platform that's invented a new way to play fantasy sports. For innovation, our startup has had some highlights on some major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. MLB season is right around the corner. I was wondering if anyone in this group was interested in marketing or writing internship. Statement Games can give you an opportunity to break into the sports industry, or perhaps you have an interest in taking your sports writing hobby to another level. The only requirement that we have at this point is that you have a passion for Major League Baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals. So if you kind of had to guess on what type of engagement that a post like that did, I'll kick it over. Overall thoughts, what do you think?
I mean, it's something you see all the time. I do these kind of posts
Yeah.
on Twitter, on different social medias, wherever I can find a different market to try and, if I have an interest in seeing if I can attract someone out of that group. I don't see the harm in trying to recruit a little bit. Obviously keeping in mind, the temperature of the group and what they do as far as the type of posts that they allow. I don't see anything wrong with it at all.
Okay. Well, apparently, this clown did. Now, I shouldn't kind of call him. I'm sure he's kind of a nice guy or something like that here. Now, I would have put up the original, but it was basically the same post, but instead of a
Yep.
St. Louis Cardinals picture of somebody or a picture of like a New York Yankees kind of helmet. I would actually show it, but it was actually deleted from this group, and I actually kind of had the group admin of this group reach out to me, basically saying, please refrain from these kind of posts. So for a second here, I didn't understand kind of what he was actually talking about. So I kind of went back and I said, just so that I have a proper understanding on how you run your group, offering Yankee fans internships and potential job opportunities is a problem. So the dialogue and the conversation kind of went back and forth, and he actually referenced because remember, a couple of weeks ago when we talked about some of this stuff here, I always made the recommendation that you want to reach out to the group admin to see if things like this are appropriate, and kind of and to be fair and to be full disclosure, I reached out to him back in like 2018, asking him if I can actually post about Statement Games or kind of see if there's some type of joint venture that I can work out with him as him kind of being the group admin. And he came back very polite and said, hey, you know what? Look, I just want to stick with Yankee news and things like that. We don't really talk about gambling or things sport. Fine. So what I have been doing in that group is I just kind of post interesting articles that I come across here that are about like the New York Yankees. Kind of fine.
As a fan,
But
you're
yeah,
a Yankees
as a fan. But I went back to him and I was like, listen, hey, not because he touted like that conversation back in 2018. And I was like, hey, Joe, not for nothing here. I'm not sure if you looked out the window recently, but there's a couple of things that have taken place in the world since 2018. I thought that since we're on kind of like a business networking platform such as LinkedIn, offering job opportunities or internships is something that the group would see value in, what's the problem? And then he started kind of like, giving me like a little bit of a freaking kind of like, lecture on how things like that are a little bit more appropriate and kind of like, posting in, general job seeking groups and things like that on LinkedIn. So I was like, listen, hey, you know what? Not for nothing. It's your group, your rules. What the hell are you going to do? But just so that you know that on what I'm actually thinking here, I 100% completely disagree with kind of like, what you did here. So I want to throw that out there as a nugget of truth, and where something like this can be discouraging to people, and where if you kind of came across like an interaction like that, that could potentially discourage you from making other similar posts like that here. But I just wanted to kind of like, encourage and urge as a nugget of truth is to continue to test here. Just because you get like I'm not, how do I phrase this here? Just because you didn't necessarily have a pleasant experience with one individual doesn't necessarily mean that you would have the same experiences within other groups here. And I want to point out here, I mean, through this St. Louis Cardinals group here, I came across this contact Ted, made a new connection on LinkedIn. He was very intrigued with StatementGames platform. Through that interaction here, not only did he, but his whole entire family signed up for StatementGames account. And I actually just hired his son, who is John Kingston, as an intern of StatementGames. So I want to point out that as marketers, as entrepreneurs and things like that here, continue to test. And just because you get a set of results in one environment doesn't necessarily mean that you get the same result in a different environment. So I just want to point that out as a little nugget of truth, and throw it back over to you for your thoughts and comments.
It's interesting from my perspective here, because of the juxtaposition of a couple weeks ago, our show where it was very much like look at the profile, follow the rules, toe the line, and then now we're sometimes break the rules, which
well, I want to say that. I mean, what we call me a rule breaker here? Is that where we're going with it?
It's I would say that in that guy wasn't necessarily there was admin rules, and now pushing the line isn't always
Correct.
a bad thing.
Big difference between pushing the line and breaking the rules, in my opinion, are two completely different things.
Well, I would probably say that the St. Louis Cardinals admin might have had the same self-promotion rule, and didn't enforce it or didn't care as much as that guy. And a lot of it comes down to the experience of the admin. Maybe that admin had to deal with a lot of spam. I get a lot of spam on LinkedIn. So I can understand where maybe something came up prior to you joining that group, and he had to deal with a bunch of spam, and now he's put off by it.
It's a fair point. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you don't know what he was going through that day or whatever it was.
Right.
I'm pretty convinced that he actually just saw I don't know, StatementGames into the first 1 or 2 lines, and
probably. I mean,
and
it probably just saw the link.
Assumed, just because of the tone that he actually took with me, and again, it was a civil, pleasant conversation. It was, I mean, I joke around that it kind of got heated and things like that. It really didn't. But look, it's his group, his rules here. I'm obliging by the rules here. I'm pushing the envelope a little bit here, but
sometimes those rules need to be checked. Sometimes those rules need to be checked.
And I'm also looking at it from this perspective. You're on LinkedIn. This is not Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or anything like that here. For the most part, the people on LinkedIn are professionals, right? They're either networking with other professionals, looking for different business deals, looking for news from a business-related perspective here. It's tied to business. So here you actually have, in my particular case, a baseball fan, which I am. I've communicated other Yankees, Cardinals, and various other team-related news and interesting topics in other groups. And in this particular case here, given everything that's actually going on, from a traditional media perspective, and I'm referring to ESPN, CBS, things like that, breaking into traditional media providers is a challenge.
Yeah.
People aren't going into offices. There's different things here. So, but one step that you could potentially take to do that here is by getting your feet wet, getting kind of like some experience. So, hey, I can't necessarily offer you a job at CBS or anything like that at this point, but I can potentially help an aspiring sports fan a career in sports, or at least getting them some experience from a StatmentGames perspective.
Yeah.
In
And I
this
think
particular case, it's worked. Other groups, it's kind of like worked. But in other particular situations, the response wasn't necessarily ideal, and I'll leave it at that.
Now, I would say that this is something a good topic to bring up for people in our shoes watching that are trying to go about marketing through different groups, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, and whatever. Generally, as a courtesy, the rule of thumb, and it seems like you followed this. You were part of this group for at least 2 years, adding to the dialogue.
Correct. Yeah, it's not like I
different
was
links and
a
everything.
punch. It's not like I'm trying to sell some type of, I don't know, getting people to fund gambling accounts in the state of like
Yeah,
New York with, I don't know, like a William Hill account or something like that. It's not like I'm trying to.
sure. But going about this, generally the rule of thumb is to provide essentially like five topics or additions to a group, as far as links, questions, until you do one for every one piece of self-marketing.
There
That
you
has
go.
been any group that I've been in. It's a 5-to-1 ratio. Go in, add to the conversation, provide some amount of, uh, what is the term that I'm looking for? Just addition, increasing the viability of that group, and then it kind of opens the door for you to give your pitch. You get kind of your elevator pitch and see what comes out of it. That way you're not just joining a bunch of groups, spamming them. That's a good way to just get kicked out of a bunch of groups. So just from my experience, it's always been, add to the group and then, give your pitch. So which I
Fair
think in this
point.
situation you definitely did,
Fair
over 2
point.
years. Could have probably given you a little bit of grace as far as being a user and of that group.
You would
So
think, but hey, what are you going to do?
yeah,
In the grand scheme of things here, you know how many New York Yankee groups there probably are on the
oh
internet.
yeah.
This is
Well,
one.
didn't we cover this a couple episodes back on just how many Facebook groups there are in general?
Yeah,
I mean, Facebook for me is less about connecting with my family and friends anymore. It's more about um, connecting in groups, topics that mean something to me. And I think that's
I agree.
where Facebook's going to go to. So, but yeah, with that, just to wrap it up here, like you say in the notes, if you're not pushing the envelope, you're not doing your job.
That's the truth. Amen.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's wrap up here. Follow us on social media at Statement Games. Subscribe to the YouTube channel where you're seeing this video. Play Statement Games on the app or the website. Mark, it's been great. Another show in the books. It was a good long one. Lots of information there. Hopefully people dig in and digest it.
To think that we thought initially that we needed to add a couple other topics into the news and things like that. I got to learn to shut up is what I got to do. Maybe next week.
Maybe.
Maybe.
All right.
I wouldn't bet on
Until
it.
next week. I'll see you, bud.
Catch you later.